What's going on, guys? It's Indy here with Ultimate 2 Reviews. Now we're coming up here very shortly on about 3 years with Makita XGT being released. It was released back in early 2021. I think it was right around March or so. Right when it was released, I bought one of the recip saws. Actually, this one right here is my first XGT tool. Right around $300 or so. It came with a 4 amp hour battery and a charger. Of course, a little pricey compared to some of the LXT stuff, but it was definitely a well worth it tool. Now, this is going to be an unreviewed video here, so I'm not going to go into, doing a review on any one of these tools here. I'm just going to talk about my experience with the tools and how much I, like them or don't like them at all. So it's going to be a totally honest review video here. Just going to go into kind of every tool, what I think I like about XGT and what I don't like about XGT so much. So let's jump into it, guys. All right, so let's jump into the impact drivers. I got an impact wrench and also a hammer drill. Now, depending on where you are in the world, you might have access to some more tools in the US, or you might have access to the least amount of tools if you're in the US like me. So there are other options, of course, for XGT tools that are not available here in the US, unfortunately. What I mean by that is there also is a drill driver that might be available in the US, but I have not really seen it, except other than maybe online. But of course, the hammer drill is for some reason cheaper, which is kind of unusual there. I did end up buying the TD02. This is basically the Gen 2 from Japan. But I'll start over here with the Gen 1, which is basically the same in the US and Japan. It's the GTD or GDT01. This is basically the first impact driver for XGT that Makita came out with. Pretty standard. If you've had the XGT19 from the LXT, I did a number of reviews on the XGT16 and the 19. This is basically these two impact drivers kind of mashed together. If I had really described the first generation of this one as best I can. And what I mean by that is it's got all the newer modes that the XGT19 has, while it has the head shape of the 16. And it does sound more like the 16 as well, whereas the 19 is a little bit higher, a little bit, higher RPM is there as well there too. So I do like this impact driver, and honestly, if you've seen my review videos in the past, this is probably the best one you can buy, even beating out the newer, this is the Gen 2 US, look at that one in just a second, and this is the Gen 2 Japanese version. Definitely not a big fan of that one as much as I am of this one. And the cool thing is these are actually quite a bit cheaper now. I've seen them on eBay for like $80 now, which is pretty cool, like open box, they're cheap to get. However, though, the batteries, these 2.5 amp hour batteries and the chargers are not cheap. I will say I have kept all the XGT tools that I have got so far. I've not sold any of them, and all my batteries I also kept too. The only thing I've actually sold is some of the chargers, because you get basically a charger on like every single kit you get. So I have not had really a need for any of the chargers, and then I just kept two, and I'm good to go from there. All right, moving on to this is going to be the TD002G, basically the Gen 2 in Japan. There are some, of course, major differences between this Gen 2 and that Gen 2, which is the US version. Now, the Gen 2 in Japan is IP56 rated. Finally, Makita doing this. Their competition, Hikoki from Tower HPT here in the States, has been doing that for quite a number of years now. That's finally awesome to have there. So this thing, you can throw it in the mud, throw it in the dirt. You can hose it off. It's good to go. It's so common by Hikoki and Tower HPT now. It's like you think Makita would have this, already in the works and be doing it for pretty much every impact driver going forward, but they have not. So it's got basically the same modes as the first generation, not too much of a difference there. It does claim slightly more power, but in my testing, I have shown that it's actually not as powerful. So kind of weird there that this thing is a little strange. It does have, I think, superior trigger control, one of the best triggers I have used on impact driver to date, as well as the quad ring or quad LEDs here on the ring here. So I like the lighting on this a lot. It's absolutely fantastic. I have gotten a few questions in previous videos talking about, hey, do you need to have some type of filler or, a little bit longer with the JIS bits? You do not. I've used regular bits in this. I'll show you right now. If you take the regular, this is the US version, you got that much play there, which is, about the average amount of play you've got an impact driver. And you put this exact same bit in the Japanese version, notice you've got a bit more play here, but it's not like massive. This bit's not going to come out, guys. It's totally fine. And I use this all the time without a spacer or without using JS bits, and it worked perfect. There's not a single issue with this thing at all. It's just that the bit is slightly longer, you get slightly less play in it, and that's about it. It's really not that big of a deal at all there. Now with the Japanese Gen 2, you get a DST, which is going to be the dual spring technology. Basically, in an impact driver, there's a spring that, as it gets more and more resistance, it activates that spring. That's what causes your impact function to then start going. Well, the new Makita TD002 basically has two springs in there. So the first spring will activate, but as the resistance continues to increase, like say with a larger lag volt, it then can activate that second spring there. So that allows it to then, of course, not have to skip impacts because it's getting so much, resistance there. It can then continue to impact with even more force as it increases more resistance. Very cool design, but in practice, though, of course, in real life, I have not really seen a pro to using this impact driver versus even the Gen 1. So I not really seen anything there. This one also has a new Bluetooth technology on it, but you can't use it in the US because you don't really have access to the Bluetooth module, nor do you have access to downloading that app either. So I'm kind of waiting for the version to come out in the US that hopefully has those technologies. Would be awesome, but we'll see, of course, if that really does happen. I was mentioning before, too, that I have all my XGT tools and batteries. If you're wondering about warranty-wise, I have only had to warranty one 4-amp-hour battery so far. It wasn't because the battery actually failed or had any real issues with it. It's just because that sticker was kind of falling off here. And Makita claims that these are basically not IP rated, but that they are, of course, weather and somewhat water resistant there. So basically I said, hey, is this an issue? And I called up Makita and they said, yeah, that's fine. Just send it back in. We'll give you a new one. I'm like, well, I was asking if there's an issue or not, and they said, yeah, just send it back in, we'll give you a new one. So they don't really seem too concerned about, replacing these batteries for even the smallest of issues, but I guess it might be an issue if the sticker does fall off. I've heard that this is an issue on some of the earlier XGT batteries, but that issue probably has been resolved so far, because that's the only battery that I've had that issue on. Now, let's move on to the GDT02. Basically, model number wise, it should be the Gen 2 that we're seeing from Japan, but this thing is quite a step backwards, honestly, and it's quite an expensive impact driver as well, too. This thing in a kit's like $410, and it comes with two of the 2.5 amp hour batteries that you see there. Pretty disappointing. This thing is more of like an XGT 13, honestly. Yeah, it's got some modes, the self-tapping stuff here. It's got the dual LEDs in the front. But for an XGT impact driver, yeah, it's kind of disappointing. This thing should be like $150 retail tops, not $250, $300. It's wildly overpriced. Would not recommend this impact driver at all. This thing is quite disappointing for XGT. I don't know why they came out with this. They should have came out with the US version of that impact driver. Would have been really cool for this price, and that would have been a real game changer there. So this is definitely not an impact driver I would recommend. It's kind of just, I don't know, it lacks a lot of features that the other ones have, and you can get this one cheaper with more features and more power. So this thing is kind of a weird one. I would say definitely avoid the GDT02. Especially when you get the first generation so much cheaper. Yeah, there's not really much to say about this thing. It kind of comes in dead last in a lot of my testing. When I test out the 40 volt and 36 volt impact drivers, it's kind of just meh. And I'm not really sure why Makita went with this one exactly. All right, so here is my newest tool from XGT. This is the GWT05, and I think they have the 04 is going to have the hog ring versus the pin detent. I prefer the pin detent myself. Makita's hog rings, they always seem to fall off really quick for me. Like within the first week or two of using them, you either got to bend them back on with the pliers or get a new one if you lose it, which is kind of silly there. But I like the pin detent a lot. They work really well for me. This is basically identical to the LXT. They're basically a regular impact driver, but the retail price of this thing is insane. Honestly, it's like $324 on this thing. It's just ridiculous. So what I'm holding here, if you count the price of this battery at like $150, $160, I'm holding like $500 in my hand right now of retail value, which is absolutely insane for a tool and a battery. This is one of those tools that I'm like, don't buy it at full retail price. It's not worth it. It's slightly more powerful than the LXT version, but can you get the LXT version and batteries for significantly cheaper if you just shop around a little bit? I would say go with that. I did pick this up on eBay, brand new in the box, for about $140 or so. So I don't know why some of the XGT stuff is going so cheap, but I do kind of have a guess on that one. My guess is that a lot of stuff is sold at Home Depot. And of course, when people like to steal stuff at Home Depot, they might go and steal the most expensive tools they can find because they know they can take them to a pawn shop really quick and get the most amount of cash. And XGT right now is the most expensive brand of tools to steal. So that's where we're seeing so many of the chainsaws, so many of the string trimmers right now, so many of the impact wrenches behind me there. You've seen those on eBay all the time now, and they're almost all sold by pawn shops brand new in the box. So that's my best guess of what's going on there, which is kind of crazy. Most of the places around me now, Home Depot, they've got all the tools and they're well secured now. So I can definitely see theft being an issue there, and that's kind of my best guess as far as seeing a lot of them get so cheap on eBay. Also, that's why a lot of 4 amp-hour batteries out there is because those are being stolen pretty easily, as well as those are also a free tool with a lot of other XGT tools or the free battery, and some people just sell those back on eBay. So if you're wondering, that's my best guess. I'm not for sure, I don't work at a pawn shop or anything, so I can't confirm that, or Home Depot, but that's my best guess there. All right, let's move on to the drill here. Now, this drill is kind of interesting. It's got some new stuff to it, new technology that Makita released on this. For a hammer drill, it's amazing, honestly. It's phenomenal. It's super, super fast, very, very powerful, tons of power to it. Definitely does everything right. But my biggest complaint, though, is on the new automatic clutch system, which is honestly not awesome. So basically you can adjust it with, it's basically a digital clutch here, or electronic clutch. And you adjust it basically from your numbers here. You can go from 1, I think it's to like, yeah, 1 to 21, depending on which gearbox mode you're in. So you've got options there to choose from, if you're in speed 1 or speed 2. That's cool, but the problem is it doesn't work in practice. Now I did a test with this versus the LXT version, and the LXT version, just with the actual mechanical clutch, just, destroy this, just the electronic clutch on here, because it's just not precise. Because a mechanical clutch will actually slip when it gets a certain amount of resistance. So you're actually mechanically slipping that clutch when you hit a certain amount of resistance. Where this thing, it can't actually slip the gearbox. What's actually doing is it's just disabling the motor when it gets to a certain amount of resistance, which isn't as instant, of course, as a mechanical switch there. So that's the big problem. This is definitely not useful for, of course, doing precise work. I would say get the smaller LXT version of a drill, or even go Makita HPT if you need more precision there. It's kind of like, like one of the latest, flagship vehicles. They throw some features in there. They might not all work perfect, but you're gonna get the newest stuff and the flagship stuff. This is what's going on here with this tool. It's the flagship tool. They're throwing in some, kind of cool new stuff. It's not perfected yet, but it's in there. Kind of get you to buy it and see what happens. So that's what they're doing with this. It's a great hammer drill. Just don't expect the clutch to work as well as you think it's going to work. And it is quite heavy, quite bulky. For a hammer drill, that's fine. But for, using for anything else, I would say just pick up a smaller LXT drill. This is definitely not my most used drill in my workshop, or even when I work out in clients' homes. I've got other drills that I use from Wowzers HPT and Makita that are definitely superior to this for the majority of my use when I'm not using a hammer drill. All right, guys, let's move over to some of the bigger tools. Now, this is where Makita XGT really shines here. So I'm in Florida. I know I mention this all the time in my videos, but I'm in Florida. It gets super hot here. And one of the big issues I've had with a lot of my tools, chainsaws being the #1 biggest one, is they overheat super fast. So with LXT, of course, we have that 36-volt battery platform, which you put in 2 LXT batteries and you go from there. My problem, though, was when I'm using a chainsaw on a job, I'm using it really heavy, cutting up some tree branches for a client, those batteries will overheat far before the chainsaw overheats. I would always say it's a 6-to-1 ratio. You can go through 6 LXT batteries on a chainsaw before the chainsaw starts to overheat. Then it's kind of a bad situation, because then you gotta basically put that chainsaw and the batteries down, let them cool. And what I would do then is go to a second chainsaw. I'd always buy 2 of them, because of course the heat was a big issue. It's not practical money-wise. You might as well buy a gas chainsaw at that point. But for me, I don't use chainsaws every single day, so having battery-powered ones, they're less maintenance. They always start when I need them to. For me, it's well worth it, and I definitely like using them so far. However, though, going to XGT, that basically solves that issue entirely. I can use the new 5 amp-hour batteries, which I've got in these saws right now, and it'll actually burn the entire battery down to basically 0 or 1 bar, and the battery will not overheat, nor will the chainsaw overheat in basically a heavy duty situation. So Makita finally has that nailed. That is awesome to have that down, and these tools are actually fully useful now. It's pretty amazing to see that actually working out great. So basically, the number one tool I would recommend from XGT, and I haven't covered them all just yet, is the chainsaws. And yeah, they are crazy expensive. They are going on clearance right now, which is kind of cool, and I don't know why that is exactly. If you see my previous Home Depot videos on that, they're getting on clearance right now, which is interesting. But you can, of course, find these on eBay relatively cheap. That's why I bought one of these on eBay. And then you can put the 5 ampere batteries as well too, which is awesome because those are really expensive batteries, like $250 per battery on those. But these have plenty of power, definitely more power than the 36 volts, but they do lack a little bit of runtime compared to the 36 volt. That's what I've noticed. My 36 volt saws in cooler weather, kind of doing more medium use where you take more breaks between heavy cuts. Those will last slightly longer because you're putting out more power with nearly the same watt hours on the batteries here. So that's going to be your one difference there. But again, though, I think the XGT chainsaws are the biggest reason to upgrade from LXT going into XGT. All right, let's go over behind me here. So I've got the 2 reciprocating saws here. I mentioned this one already, and this is probably one of the best tools in XGT. This is going to be the Gen 1 reciprocating saw. Yeah, these are pretty beefy, pretty heavy. This is a GRJ01. First generation, they're pretty cheap now. You can find them for like 150 to 250 on eBay. They're pretty much a no-frills reciprocating saw. It's brushless. You got speed 1 lock and speed 2, and that is it. There's no other option in this thing. It's a heavier reciprocating saw. It has never let me down. Just an awesome saw, and yeah, it's a great tool. Big upgrade from going from the 36 volt saw, so I've actually never used one of those, but it's just really bulky down here with having 2 batteries on there, as well as going from an 18 volt saw from like Milwaukee, DeWalt, even Makita, and I just sold mine, and I'm pretty much going with exclusively the 36 volt saws now, or the XGT saws now, and they are phenomenal. So I also got this new one that just came out, and it's also pretty wildly expensive now too. It's over $300. I think it's like $310 for just the tool alone. Crazy expensive. I know. This is the GRJ02. Basically the second generation of that one. They add basically a just a lock up here, so same as that other one. But your speed modes are now here, 1 through 5, which is awesome to have that. Very customizable. I actually have used these quite a bit from cutting PVC, from doing my sink project I just did last week, to basically cutting up a playset, which is awesome. So this saw can really do it all with a lot more precision than a lot of other saws that just have like a speed 1 or speed 2. So this thing's also a little bit shorter, a little bit beefier too, and they now have the AVT, or anti-vibration technology. Finally, they add in a orbital mode, which isn't that big of a deal, honestly. Orbital basically is, instead of just going front, back, front, back, front, back, it basically adds a little bit of a elliptical curve there into the saw motion. So if you think about when you're cutting any type of wood, basically you're going to get those wood chips there, and if your saw blade isn't coming all the way out to clear those chips can kind of sit there in the cutting path, and they can slow down the saw there. When you add that orbital motion, you're allowing that saw blade to free those chips up with every single stroke there. Now, in practice or real life, I haven't really noticed a massive difference in that with that on or off. Even cutting up some larger, pieces of wood, it sort of works, but it's never been a one big feature that I've like, I gotta have a reciprocating saw that has a orbital action to it. It's something that's cool to have, but are you going to use it all the time? Probably not. Are you going to see a difference with it? Probably not. So nice to have. Do you need it? Probably not. All right, and my final tool I've got from Makita XGT is the XGT blower, which is a pretty neat tool. Now, I've had both the 18 volt and 36 volt blowers. They both have pretty significant weaknesses in them, is that the 18 volt blower is rather underpowered, whereas the 36 volt blower is just a battery hog. It goes through batteries super, super fast, and it's kind of annoying having 2 batteries always throwing those things in the charger. Whereas the XGT blower here kind of fixes both those problems. It's got more power than the 36 volt blower, while also not going through batteries as fast. It's able to go through batteries within pretty much every 2 times I blow off my entire driveway and sidewalk and garage. I got to recharge the battery, which is about the same as the 36 volt blower. but it's not showing any signs of, like, when it gets down to like 1 or 2 bars, you don't really see as much of a voltage drop on that tool as with the 36 volt blower, where it's very, very noticeable, like, hey, my batteries are getting low, I should go change these. The XGT batteries do a lot better job of giving you consistent power no matter how fully charged or how almost depleted that battery is there. All right, guys, so that's my honest opinions on a lot of the Makita XGT tools. So talking honestly here, if I had to say, hey, if you're interested in XGT, what tools I recommend to get first? Now, I would definitely say, honestly, I don't recommend a lot of the XGT smaller tools like the impact wrenches and drivers, the drills. They're kind of just meh, and they are very, very expensive. I mean, not meh as in, they're not good performing. They're great performing tools, but for the price, you've got a lot of other options out there, and they're kind of more of just a convenience of, hey, I've already got XGT batteries. Why not just get the drill impact, that Dorsal's batteries too? It's kind of just those tools that are for that. They're not breaking any like records for power or anything like that. They're not all IPv6 rated. Only one of my tools is, and it's not even available in the US. So there's nothing like wildly amazing that's about the XGT drills and impacts that's like, whoa, you definitely gotta get these. They are definitely worth the, $300, $400, $500 price tag on them. They're just great to have for using XGT batteries. Where XGT really truly shines, though, is in a lot of the outdoor tools. The chainsaws are absolutely amazing. The blower is amazing. Higher power tools like the reciprocating saws are also amazing. And there's also one more tool I want to show you guys too. These circular saws are also phenomenal with these because this is the new rear handle. It's about a pound lighter than the 36 volt, but it also has considerably more power to it. And I just love this saw. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's bulky for a rear handle, but I think Makita did a phenomenal job definitely improving this thing. For hacking the price at Home Depot, it comes up to $170 with a 4 amp hour battery. I did this a couple months back, I think in March or something like that of this year. When you get a free 4 amp hour battery, it was also $100 off too. So this is an awesome tool to get for XGT because a lot of the tools behind me are definitely higher draw tools. They require a lot of power to do their job well. So having a lot more power available, like in the XGT batteries, that 40 volt system is phenomenal. That's where these tools really shine. The less power hungry tools like impacts, drills, they're great, but again, there's a lot of other tools that can do the job for a lot cheaper and maybe be like half a second slower, unless you're looking for the absolute best of the best, which for some jobs that I do, having the best of the best tools is well worth it. For some of my bigger AV jobs that I do, having those tools is absolutely amazing. So I do appreciate having the XGT stuff, but do you need it? Not really. However, when it comes to a lot of the outdoor power tools, it's absolutely amazing. But of course, some of the negatives of XGT are the just absurd price points. I've covered this in a number of other videos. I want to get the XGT mower. However, though, being $700 plus now, just tool only, is absurd. I might as well just buy a gas Honda mower at that price point. That's crazy. And actually, I just bought a second 36 volt LXT mower on Facebook for $200 and got batteries with it again. I called it quits there. I just said, no, I've got two LXT mowers. I only paid $600 now for two of them because I got one for $400, this one for $200. I just got it recently, and I've got, I think, 6 batteries with it now too, and a dual charger. So phenomenal value there, and it does my yard no problem. So it's worth me spending that entire amount of money plus $100 to get a tool only to go 40 volt. Not really, I don't think so. There's other tools, of course, I want too, like the string trimmer. It's pretty expensive. Yeah, it's going on clearance for $350, but even at $350, that's still pretty expensive. So there's a lot of tools out there from XGT that I think are going to be well worth it, just not so worth it at the current price points. So the big problem with XGT is pricing is just all over the board. It's wildly expensive. However, though, some of the tools you can pick up from Japan directly, like the mid-torque, is right around $200, not $400 as it is here in the States. So some of the tools you can get cheaper elsewhere. It's kind of like a little bit of a tool hack there, being able to find the tools elsewhere and import them, which is ironically cheaper than buying them here in the US. We're constantly seeing new tools from XGT coming out. I know we've got a router coming out soon. We've got a jigsaw coming out soon. There's a lot of cool stuff coming with XGT. So there's always been to watch out for XGT. However, though, I could see XGT, slowly taking over a lot of the OPE, outdoor power equipment segment. But are they going to do it with the current price points? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. For me, if someone that's into doing, a lot of Makita stuff, I got all Makita tools. Even the price points are hindering me myself because they're just so expensive. A lot of tools I need to buy 2 or 3 of them for what I do. Especially when I have another helper working with me, we need 2 of them. I mean, this setup right here with extra batteries is going to be about $1,200 to $1,500 in just chainsaws. I mean, I could just go down to my local steel dealer and pick up 2 chainsaws for cheaper, and they're pro grade. Don't even worry about batteries; I just need gas. So, again, though, they have to compete with some of the gas stuff, and are they doing it successfully? I would say no, honestly. If you're an actual professional and you need using a tool literally the whole day, this is not the way to go. I still think gas is the way to go. The amount of batteries you would need to run this saw for a full 8-hour day, it would just be crazy. I think you need at least 5 or 6 plus a way to charge them maybe on your trailer somehow. It's just not practical. So that's just one way that Makita XGT, yeah, it's not really there fully yet. Yeah, we could see some bigger batteries coming out, but again, no, that just increases the cost of a single point of purchase there. Now, if we see maybe a 12 amp hour battery come out, is it going to be $500-$600? Because I'm not paying $500-$600 for a single battery. That's way too much for me to spend on one battery. But to conclude, I will say I am slowly replacing a lot of my LXT tools with the new XGT stuff. I'm slowly, as I find deals, and that's the key point of this video, is I find deals on the stuff. I'm not really buying into the stuff at full retail. I'm waiting until either it goes on a sale that I can hack at Home Depot, I can find a good deal on eBay, I can find it at a pawn shop. I'm waiting for some decent deals on these tools before I really, go for them. Because I think they're just way, way too expensive at full retail price. I'm slowly getting rid of some of my LXT stuff, not all my LXT stuff. If you look behind me, you can kind of tell where I'm at between LXT and XGT. I've got 6 bays of charging for LXT, and I've only got 2 for XGT. So I'm still very, very heavy in LXT. My mower still uses it. My string trimmer still uses it. I've got my miter saws. I've got 2 of my top handle chainsaws. The majority of my tools are still LXT, but I'm changing over as fast as I can. A lot of my heavy use tools, like say my chainsaws, I like to get a mower if that ever does go on sale or some type of deal. I want to pick up one of the new string trimmers, would be awesome. So as that stuff slowly goes on deals, I'm slowly swapping out all my LXT stuff for it. Price wise, yeah, I'm being cautious with that, of course, but so far the reliability that I've seen in these tools has been excellent. About 2.5 years now. Not all these tools I've had for that long, but some of the tools now are basically the line I've had this long in XGT. I think it's overall been a very, very solid line, and definitely I just want to continue going on XGT. So it's not a line I definitely recommend for everybody. It's definitely very, heavy, use focus. It's definitely not something you could just say, hey, I want to mow my lawn. It's like, if that's all you're going to use XGT for, don't buy an XGT mower. There's better options out there that are way cheaper. So XGT, if you really want a powerhouse line that is, much more resistant to heat, this is the way to go. Again, though, we've got Makita behind this, so we're going to get new tools, but they're not really going to tell you when we get new tools. They're kind of just going to be like, hey, we got new tools, but don't tell anybody. that's classic Makita there. So thanks for watching, guys. Take care. If you got any questions, leave them in the comments below. Answer any questions you got about XGT. It'll be a really fun brand to have, guys. But thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe out there and have a great day.